Matthew 23. Now, keep in mind, now, it's at the end of Jesus' life here on earth, okay? So interesting things are going to happen, especially when we get to chapter 24. Very important chapter. So 23. Jesus spoke to the multitudes and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. Therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, that observe and do, but do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. You understand what he's saying there? It says, what they say is right, it's just that they don't do it. So they're basically, they said, scribes and Pharisees are a bunch of hypocrites.
Practicing what they're preaching.
Yeah, they don't practice what they're preaching. So he's not mentioning any words here. For they bind heavy burdens, hard to bear, lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. So, but all their works they do to be seen by men. They make their phylacteries broad, enlarge the borders of their garments. They love the best places at feasts, the best seats in the synagogues, greetings in the marketplace, and to be called by men, Rabbi, Rabbi. But you, do not be called Rabbi, for one is your teacher, the Christ, and you are all brethren. Do not call anyone on earth your father, for one is your Father, he who is in heaven. Do not be called teachers, for one is your teacher, the Christ. But he who is the greatest among you shall be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be abased. He who humbles himself will be exalted. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For you neither go in yourselves, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You devour widows' houses, for a pretense make long prayers, therefore you receive greater condemnation. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You travel land and sea to win one proselyte. When he is won, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourselves. Hey, this would be a commentary in some ministries today, really. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears by the temple, it is nothing. But whoever swears by gold of the temple, he is obliged to perform it. Fools, blind. For which is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold? Whoever swears by altar, it is nothing. Whatever swears by the gift that is on it, he is obliged to perform it. Fools, blind. For which is greater, the gift on the gift or the altar that sacrifices the gift? Therefore, he who swears by the altar swears by it and by all things on it, but he who swears by the temple swears by it and him who dwells in it. He who swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits on it. So he's really making a mockery. He says the whole point of their day is that they make a big thing about gold and silver and da-da-da, and they're worshiping it. It's got nothing to do with it. 23. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. Notice how many times he calls them hypocrites? You pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. Blind guides who strain out a gnat, yet swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cleanse the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside they're full of extortion and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first cleanse the inside of the cup and the dish, that the outside of them may be clean also. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you're like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but inside are full of dead men's bones and uncleanness. So really, I mean, can you imagine if they're listening to this? They've got to be livid. I mean, nothing good to say about that. You're a bunch of hypocrites. You look good, but you're evil. Even so, also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you're full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you build the tombs of the prophets and adorn the monuments of the righteous and say, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we have not been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets.
You're right.
Therefore you are witnesses against yourselves, that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then, the measure of your father's guilt. Serpents, brood of vipers, How could you escape the condemnation of hell? Now, interesting point here. Jesus does not mince his words. He's not also afraid of calling them names. I mean, really, a serpent and a viper or a dog were the worst names you could call anybody back then. But he called them that. It's like saying you're a bunch of idiots. You're stupid jerks. Okay, 134. Therefore, indeed, I send you prophets, wise men, scribes. Some of them you will kill and crucify. Some of them you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from city to city, that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on the earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Assuredly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. So he's not only not mincing his words, said, you guys are in a heap of trouble, okay? You guys are in a heap of trouble. Last couple of verses. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her, how often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you're not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate. For I say to you, you shall see me no more till you say, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. Any comments on that chapter? Now, today's people would say, you know, Jesus is full of hate.
Yeah, he says bad things.
Yeah.
He says
I'm not going to vote for him. He says bad things. But the point is, he does do that, okay?
Yeah.
And okay, and I saw a post the other day on Facebook. Again, somebody negatively speaking against evangelical preachers because we say bad things against people. You know, we talk against the gay community. We talk against homosexuality. We talk against sin. We're constantly belittling people.
There you go. But then, like, I have a cousin. She'll post things that I've done back in my teenage years. People change.
Yeah.
People change.
Yeah.
And if I post something against, what really gets me is the tampons in the 4th grade and the sex identity teaching. Are you a boy or a girl? Having kids in kindergarten questioning if they want to be what? That to me is just plain wrong.
You got things in school now, but people are identifying as animals.
Yeah.
Dogs,
Cats.
Come on. I mean,
The point I was thinking about the other day, I was thinking of one of Gordon Jensen's songs, and who you was is not who you is.
Yeah, right.
And it's not good English, but it's something, you know, who I was is not who I is today.
Yeah.
And we've changed, and right, and you can bring up the past. You can bring up the past of anybody. Well, I remember when you. Oh yeah, but that's who I was.
Yeah.
And there's another gospel song that name I hear once in a while on Pandora that deals with that whole issue. I used to be that way. That's not who I am today, because God changed me.
Yeah.
And that's the point, and we've been changed. And the point is these religious leaders have not changed one bit. And they're simply leading people down this pit of hell, and Jesus makes no bones about it, and calling them the names. And I remember one time, one of my messages I preached, this is back when Pastor Jack was here, and one of them was called Satan is Stupid. And somebody was offended by the word stupid. Is it right? But like, I refer to Forrest Gump, okay?
Yeah.
Mama says, you do stupid, you is stupid. I mean, that's it. I mean, if you do stupid things, you are a stupid person.
People relate to that more than they would to Christianity or the Bible, you know?
And so the point is the problems we go through are so many times a product of our own decisions. We make bad choices, okay?
Yeah.
We date the wrong people.
Yeah.
Right.
We go to the wrong places.
Yeah.
We read the wrong book. We walk. We go to and then we pay the consequences for that. I mean, the hardest time now for me, I like to watch good movies. You know how hard it is to find a good movie?
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at PG-13, gotta be good. 10 minutes into it, you got the F. I go, you gotta be kidding. That's PG-13? So unless it's simply PG, he's still wrong.
Or Disney. The old Disney stuff.
And Disney
Like I said, the old Disney stuff.
and almost every program today inserts gays. You'll be sitting there watching, and suddenly these two guys are going, "You gotta be kidding me!"
Well, they did sing in commercials.
Oh, commercials.
I mean, I'm like,
Yeah.
I usually don't get them to go to the bathroom, and I'm like, I'll go.
I mean, and the problem is we're being conditioned
Correct.
That's the whole.
to accept it.
Correct.
This is normal. It used to be offensive to us. It's no longer offensive.
Oh, yeah.
Like right now, the S word is almost in every program. That used to be, or some words like damn.
Yeah.
I think with God used to be forbidden. Now it's
interesting.
it's just
You hear that on the radio all the time.
yeah. It's like
All the time.
and then, well, this is today's society. Well, or somebody said, well, that's this is all the people, all my friends, everybody does that. I go, no, not in my circle of friends. We don't do that, really. And it's the language, the thought. But what gets me is that Christianity is being blamed for a lot of the evils today because we are homophobic, we are anti-gay, we are anti-this, and we are the problem. And here's the problem is therapists, now I know a lot about therapists, okay? I know how they think, I've gone through some of the courses. A therapist's job is to get you to the point where you're happy with yourself because your problem is a result of somebody else. And so you got to learn that your problem is how you were raised. It's your father, it's your mother, or what church you go to. Really? Well, that's the problem right there. Your problem is these people have been teaching you things, and I've run into this over and over again now. Well, my therapist says that's. I'm going through this now with a family member, and that's all her problems is the way she was brought up. So now it is, and so you see these post letters, you find them on Facebook and Instagram, different people who have left the church because of a pastor. Well, that's the problem. You're watching a guy who's fallible make a mistake, and you're blaming God for it, or you blame God for all the evil. It's,
I'm sure you remember the Jimmy Swagger.
oh,
Yeah.
you kidding me?
Back then I was just got saved. And see, you're all a bunch of hypocrites. You're all like Jimmy Swagger, and what are you gonna say? No, I didn't say.
Well, the same thing with the Bakers and others.
Yeah.
When any kind of evangelical takes a fall, what's that other ministry based out of Australia? All the investigations.
Oh, I know you're talking about.
Heart Song? No, is it Heart?
It's the other one.
Anyway, that
With the one. I know what you're talking about.
yeah, that hit.
Yeah, they do a lot of singing. The pastor
Yes.
just he got caught cheating on his
Yeah.
wife or something.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they were part of the Australian assemblies, but they left. And so people, well, these were assemblies. No, they weren't assemblies of God, not at all. And the point is, they point to that as criticism against the Pentecostal church or the assemblies, and that's the whole problem. You can't trust preachers anymore. And I remember at a family camp, we got digressed, but really not.
That's it.
A brother and a sister came after service on a Sunday, waiting for me outside. Never came to church, and wanted their father to have the funeral in the church. Now, I asked a little about. Well, no, the father had nothing to do with preachers. The churches hated Christianity, but he was a good Christian. I'm listening to him. Well, boy, he can't. He hates preachers. Doesn't like Christianity. Nothing to do with church. But he's a Christian. Well, yeah, his favorite song is "Amazing Grace." That was their basis of his Christian faith.
Yeah.
And people don't get it. They really don't get it. And this is why I've said it before, that really, and I think statistically it's been proven now that your strong evangelical churches really are on a decline.
Yeah.
Because they're gravitating towards the churches that are, what was the word again, non-threatening.
Feel good, church.
I don't feel guilty. This is why a lot of people left here when Pastor Joseph came. Really, I don't need to feel guilty. I remember one lady said, I want to leave the church feeling happy and good. I don't want to feel good. I don't want to feel like I'm a sinner. The problem is you are.
Right.
This was a woman. Okay, I gotta watch myself here. Whose son died years and years ago, but she talks to him frequently because he meets her at night, and he's dead, and she talks to the dead. Okay, now.
Yeah, that's familiar spirits, right?
Yeah, and so it's like, but it's Christian, I don't need to be told I'm wrong. And so people like go to another church, and that's the sad thing, that people don't want to be challenged. I just want to be made that I'm doing good. I'm okay, you're okay. That was a very popular book years ago. I'm okay, you're okay. Then somebody else came up with the book, you're not okay, and neither am I. That didn't sell as well.
I guess not.
Okay. But the fact is, you got these promotional guys, a lot of ministry, that's all they promote. I remember, I know some people watch these guys, okay? But I know he's a popular name. But even on interview him, he says, no, my ministry is not about sin. It's not about hell. It's about heaven. It's about keeping people positive. And there are people in church that follow people like that. And I go, why? That's not the gospel. That's not the gospel. But then these are the guys that have the mega churches, 10, 15,000 people, because this is where people want to go. I want to go and I want to feel good.
Okay.
Well, like I said, that's what, where it says, the road to heaven is narrow and few will get there. The road to hell is wide. If it's really easy, then the devil's saying, hey, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, right. The bottom line is, very few are going to make it to heaven. People don't like to hear that. And I hear it all the time. Well, we're going to see each other in heaven. And I'm thinking, really? Okay. I don't think so, And then that's, well, who are you to judge? Well, no, we don't.
That's it.
But if you ask me point blank, am I going to heaven? And I would say, well, according to the Bible, here's the Bible. You're not doing what the Bible says you need to do to go to heaven. Then, no, you're not. Well, how dare you say that? Well, you ask if this is what the Bible says. We got to go on. It's chapter 34. Oh, Michael's not done.
Did you read that there are now atheist pastors?
Atheist pastors?
An open letter from God.
Yep. Right.
Yeah, if you want anything but spiritual relief or anything, you can go to one of these and they will tell you everything is okay, there's no God, you know what I mean? Oh, I would read this like,
It's like when we lived up in New Hampshire. This is the honest truth. There's a message I preached that says, whatever happened to Christianity? And I listened to the news, and on the TV, did a report on, there's a nudist colony up in New Hampshire, and they did a special report on the evangelical church. It's in that nudist colony.
oh shit.
And everybody said, I got to check this out. But it's true. I know where it's at, but they have Sunday morning services for all the nudists.
Where's it at?
We got to inspect.
We gotta fact check it.
They could be wrong, but I remember the news reporter going there, and they interviewed the pastor. He had clothes on, but I'm thinking, I got to check this out. Okay, 24, again, is a very important chapter. Remember, he's at the end of his life here on earth. So, and then Jesus went out and departed from the temple. His disciples came to him to show him the buildings, and Jesus said, do you not see these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another, that shall not be thrown down. Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. He says, tell us, when will these things be? What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Now, this is a very important passage, okay? Well, excuse me. This is a private setting. They know he's leaving. They know he's coming back. Now they want to know when. So, Lord, let us know, what should we look for? What are the signs of your return? What should we, so this is very important. Jesus answered, okay, take heed, no one deceives you. Many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many, okay? That's happening today. I mean, how many times do you hear of these big cults, whether it's Jim Jones or some of the other, where they actually call themselves, I am the Messiah. For many will come in my name, and you will hear of wars, rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Okay, so towards the end of time, there's going to be a whole lot of wars. Going to be rumors of war, but that's not it. It's not the end yet. For nation, will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines, pestilences, earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Now you take a look at what's going on in the world. I think we can easily say these are the beginning of sorrows. Now people, again, somebody mentioned on Facebook a few months ago, yeah, we've heard this since we were youth, all these things, nothing's happening, it's never gonna happen. Well, okay, verse 9. It says, first of all these are the beginning. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you. You will be hated by all nations for not my name's sake. Now, this is what happened to the Jews, right?
Yeah, it's happening now too.
I'm reading the book now on I just started it Thursday. Oh, what's the name of it? It's the true story of 8 women around the world and their story of horror and martyrdom. This is going on now in these countries, okay? We're being persecuted by Muslims. With this one watched as her son was decapitated. Husband is killed, Muslim, and you're forced to convert to Islam, being forced to, and they rape you. In this particular case, she was raped and produced a child. It's a long story, but this is what's happening now, okay? So you're going to be for my name's sake, and then many will be offended, will betray one another, will hate one another. Many false prophets will arise and deceive many. Now, this is happening today. And because lawlessness would abound, sound familiar? Love of many will grow cold, but he who endures to the end shall be saved. This gospel of the kingdom will be preached into all the world as a witness to all nations. Then the end will come. The thing is now, this is the first time in history where the gospel has gone throughout the whole world. Yeah. It's never happened before. We have missionaries now in parts of the world that have never been entered. And the gospel is being preached. And what's interesting, I remember years ago reading an article when they found this very remote tribe somewhere and found out that they had this high moral caliber where their worships were very Jewish. And they couldn't figure it out. Their festivals and their feast days went all the way back to ancient Judaism. And yet they were a remote tribe that had never been in contact with white people and anything else. And so the Bible does teach that there is this innate knowledge inside of us of the belief in God. You may not know his name is Jesus, you may not know his name is Yahweh, but you know there's a higher power. And we know that today the gospel, for us, we know it's been reached, the entire world's been reached. So we are living in that point in time. This has never happened before. But the point of lawlessness, oh my, give me a break, okay? And those who endure to the end, okay, going to be saved. So the point is, this is what's going to happen. So he said, hang in there, hang in there. 15. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. Now, what he's saying here, this is going to come a time when it really gets bad. You're going to have to bug out. Go. This is really what he's saying. He said, listen, don't even go back, don't even go home. Grab what you can and you leave. It's going to get that bad. Let me skip over it. Okay, 19, but woe to those who are pregnant, those who are nursing babies in those days. Pray that your flight may not be in the winter or on the Sabbath, for then will be such a great tribulation, such as not been seen since the beginning of the world until this time, nor ever shall be. So he's talking about the coming of the tribulation now. And unless those days be shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Then, if anyone says to you, look, here's Christ, or there, don't believe it. For false Christ, false prophets will arise and show great signs and wonders so as to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I've told you this ahead of time. Now, here's what I find amazing. That we have this heightened interest today in the supernatural. I mean, TV is full of it. Whether it be UFOs, the aliens, And so there is this belief now in a supernatural thing that's out there. And this is pretty much what Jesus is talking about. False Christ, false prophet. There are going to be great signs and wonders. And I watched some of these shows and I said, I can't explain that.
Mm-hmm.
We're watching a show the other day on, William Shatner, on the holy relics. You know, like the crown of thorns. First of all, who in the world is going to grab those crown of thorns and save, or the spear that pierced his side? There are pieces of it all around the world, but they're said to have magical powers. This is how foolish people. So this was on the crown of thorns, and the thorns. You know, there are how many hundreds on this thing, and there are little pieces all over the world in churches, and they're talking about the miracles associated with if you can touch it, and you're healed. And this one church where the crown of thorns on this particular day every year bleeds. So I'm thinking, okay, how do you explain that? Well, it's supernatural, number one, if it's true. It's a miracle that's deceiving people to believe in these things. And they went on and chronicled all these the dramatic healings of people that touch this, they touch that. And they went on to say that there are enough pieces in the world to make hundreds of these things.
Yeah. Isn't, this when I was growing up as a Catholic, supposedly every altar in a Catholic church has a piece of bone from one of the apostles in it? Is that true?
I don't know. But like the Holy Grail, they talked about the cup of Christ. Mm-hmm. If they find it, if you could drink from it, you get eternal life.
Mm-hmm. That's Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah, it is. It's based upon the fact that people believe that. For some reason, they attribute power to ancient relics. Well, if it was touched by Christ, then therefore it's powerful. It has healing powers. I think of some of the other things they came up with. That all you need to do is touch it, or have somebody who's touched it touch you, and there's this tremendous power in this inanimate object, yet people believe it. And I'm watching this program thinking, okay, these are miracles that are happening. They say they're documented miracles, but is it by God? Is it Christ? Or is it satanic? We do know that Satan performs miracles. I mean, that's just chronicled in the Bible. Mm-hmm. And the Bible does, Jesus said, in the last days, there will be miracles. You will see people performing the supernatural. Last week I mentioned the fact, you weren't here last, we talked about this. There's a Sons of God forum on Facebook that I belong to. And this woman made this comment, it was just before Halloween, on how many of our young people and kids are gravitating towards the supernatural. I mean, whether it's the cartoons, the programs, everything's in magic, witches and warlocks and all this stuff. And she made the comment, when's the last time they experienced the supernatural in your church? Think about it. She said, we call ourselves Pentecostal, we believe in the supernatural, but when's the last time you experienced the supernatural? And she hit the nail on the head.
Well, a question, don't we experience the new supernatural every time we get up? Because the Holy Spirit is supernatural. So aren't we the product of the supernatural?
But she's talking about the fact of experience like the miracles, divine healings, the stuff that doesn't, quote unquote, doesn't happen anymore. Because we've changed how we present the gospel. Okay? I can only speak for myself. I grew up in the environment where miracles and healings were a constant event. Gordon mentioned Sunday, he was healed in a oral robbery. I was healed in an oral robbers crusade. Mm-hmm. I had asthma, 6 years old. At that point, it was gone. Mm-hmm. And I've witnessed healings. The amount of miracles we had in our church was phenomenal. And that's what grew the church. When people start hearing about miracles happening, I mean, I'm talking deaf ears, deaf open, I'm talking blind eyes, I'm talking miracles that were documented by doctors. But back then, we prayed for the sick. People believed in miracles, and miracles happened. I don't see that anymore. I mean, really, on a rare occasion. And it's a sad commentary on where we've gone. And like I shared before, the former superintendent Bob Wise and I had this conversation several years ago on that exact topic. He says, that's the problem. He says, we're old school. This is how we were brought up. We were brought up to believe in the supernatural, to believe in miracles. People today aren't. And I always preach, number one, you get sick, what's your first response? It should be God. It shouldn't be the doctor. Have faith. God says you can, But people there, first response, go to the hospital, go to the doctor. And that doesn't work, then we go to church and be prayed for. And that's pretty much how we roll today. We've reversed our priorities. I remember my son one time came down seriously ill. I mean, the fever, the sweat, I was just terribly sick. And he says, Dad, pray for me. He's laying on the couch. He could barely move. Barbara and I went over, laid hands on a very simple prayer, jumped up, I'm healed, ran outside. I mean, it was that quick. And it's like, okay, but that's how we were brought up. And as Jesus said, in the last days, we're going to see the supernatural, and we're seeing the supernatural everywhere but the church. I mean, am I right or wrong? I mean, this is it.
You're right.
You know, I grew up at an age where, we talked about it before, churches had prayer rooms. Churches don't have prayer rooms anymore. When I grew up as a kid, we had a prayer room where somebody was in there before service, during service, and after service, always praying. And there were always healings, always miracles. I remember as a kid, the pastor used to have this evangelist come once a year. He was the most boring guy, monotone, small stature, small, skinny guy. You had a hard time listening to him. But when the service was over, there were miracles every night. He was just a tremendous man of God. But I've seen demons cast out. All this stuff I witnessed as a kid. And then even in our ministry, witnessed that stuff. But because our priority was always on praying for the sick, and we don't do that anymore. I don't know why. I can't answer that. I really can't. Whenever I was doing interim work at churches, I always focused on the altar call and prayer for the sick. Always, every service. It's mandatory. It's how I grew up. But we don't do that anymore. I don't know why that is. So the lady was right. Because our youth are not experiencing supernatural things, they're finding that supernatural is out there. We no longer emphasize things like baptism of the Holy Spirit. I mean, really, we don't. The gifts of the Spirit, we don't preach it as off. We don't, and we call ourselves penitent. And so she hit the nail on the head. I'm thinking, she's right. That is the problem. So we need to get back to our roots of preaching the old-fashioned gospel, the effects of sin in your life, the power of God, and it all boils down to my faith. It's not my faith that's going to heal you, it's your faith that's going to heal you. You've got to believe. And it got to the point where people were expecting me to lay hands on them, and I had to teach them, listen, I have no power. So I report my deacons would go for. My deacons would lay hands on people and give them the oil, and people were still healed. That's the point right there. It's not me, it's not the deacons. The Bible says anoint with oil and prayer, faith, but you have to have the faith, believe God. And it happened. Now, I only speak of what I know. I've been away from my church for 30 years. And Barbara and I can yet still figure out why they keep in contact with me. I mean, we're talking Florida, South Carolina. These are people who were healed in our ministry, and yet 30 years later, they still refuse to let us go. It's like, it's a good thing, okay? Because their comments are, we miss that type of ministry. And they say over and over, one of the kids, in fact, the brother of my youth pastor down in Florida, is the pastor. He calls me all the time, he's the pastor. He says, I haven't yet to experience what we experienced in Newburyport. I can't find a church like that anymore. They don't exist. And the sad story is, he's right. They don't exist. Well, they may in certain places, but if they do, they're going to be smaller churches where people don't want to gravitate to. So, what time? Oh, we're running out of time here. Okay, let's continue on. Verse 29. No, where did we leave off? False prophets. Okay,
26, isn't it?
26. Therefore, if they say to you, look, he's in the desert, don't go there. Or he's in the inner room, don't believe it. For if the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of man, Son of Man be. For wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will gather. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from heaven, the powers of heavens will be shaken, and then the Son of Man will appear in the heavens with all the tribes of the earth, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn. They shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven in power and great glory. He will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. They will gather together his elect from the four corners of the wind, one end of heaven to the other. Gordon mentioned the song it's called The Sound of a Trumpet, which was a series of prophetic movies, which I wish we could show him again. His song was featured in that. Now, learn the parable of the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see these things, know it is near at the very hour. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things are fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words by no means will pass away. No one knows, I'm going to go back to that in a minute, but no one knows the day or the hour, not even the angels of heaven, only my Father. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating, drinking, marrying, given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them away. So also will be the coming of the Son of the Man. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken, the other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken, the other left. Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour the Lord is coming, but know this, if the master of the house had known the hour the thief would come, he would have watched, and have not allowed his house to be broken into. Therefore, you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour when you don't expect him. Who then is a faithful servant and wise servant, whom his master made ruler over his household to give them food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master, when he comes, will found so doing. Assuredly, I say to you that he will make him ruler over all his goods. But if that evil servant says in his heart, my master is delaying his coming, and begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with the drunkards, the master of that servant will come on a day that he's not looking for him, in an hour when he's not aware of, and he will cut him in two, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Let me just make a quick note here. Now, one of the important things of this chapter is, number one, he's telling us what's going to happen before he comes, and he gives us the illustration of the fig tree. And the fig tree has always been an illustration of Israel, always. And he makes a statement, when you see the tree budding, you know the harvest is ready. And then he says, this generation shall not end until it happens. What generation? The generation that sees Israel reborn. That's our generation. So this kind of puts it in perspective, okay? That these are the things that are going to be happening just before the tribulation comes. And so we are that close. And the people, they boo-hoo it, they laugh at it. Now they've been saying this for thousands of years. The point is, these things never happened before. Never happened before. We're seeing that again on the news yesterday. You see all the riots against the Jews?
Yeah.
And it was in Amsterdam up there. They're just
Soccer team?
Yeah, the soccer team.
Yeah, they were chasing them.
Israel had to send jets in to get them out of there, and they say that the anti-Semitism is on the rise. Well, exactly what Jesus said is going to happen. They're going to persecute, they're going to hate you, they're going to chase you, you're going to have to leave your homes. This is what's happening. So they need our prayers, and we need to pray for our country as well.
Just a question.
Yeah.
How biblically, how long is a generation?
Debatable. We don't know. Back then, a generation was very short, but now our generation, it could be 80, 90. We're living into our 90s now. And so nobody knows. So if you were to take that literally, the generation that saw the rebirth of Israel would be the generation. That's my generation. But we don't know. Is it meant to be taken literal? We don't know. Just that there is going to be that time when Israel becomes a nation, she blossoms, which she has, and when she does, the Bible does predict there'll be a lot of things going on over there. Persecution, they're going to be hating the Jews, and this is what we're seeing today. So we know it's got to be fairly close. The point is we just need to be ready.